So I have made a 24-minute video that I don't want to edit anything out of, but I actually need to tack something on at the beginning. For folks who have issues around arachnophobia or sexual assault, just be forewarned that I do bring up both of those types of topics in this video. So I would rather you know at the beginning than be surprised in the middle. I totally get that. But I do hope that this topic resonates with you. It is my personal story. It's about everything that I've been going through over the last 4 months and specifically the last 2 weeks. So I do hope it resonates with some of you. Drop a comment. Let me know. I'm so grateful that you're here and that you watch these videos with me. And if you have suggestions for other topics, please drop those too. Thanks. Hi, and welcome back to Rose Connections. My name is Janet Rose, and today is a Radical Reflections topic. And Radical Reflections is all about really knowing yourself and really understanding who you are and what you bring to the table, what's unique and special and worthy about you, even the things that you think are not worthy. It's about embracing yourself completely and wholly as you are, knowing your resources, climbing your own mountain, and challenging yourself to see where you play a part in this wider, bigger perspective of creating a more heart-centered world. That's the gist of it. Today, I am going to be talking about the topic of forgiveness, forgiving yourself. I do a relationship reboot topic, and we can talk about forgiveness and how forgiveness works and doesn't work with other people. But I think when we're talking about ourselves, a lot of the quotes that we see about forgiveness just don't help that much. And instead of presenting a topic per se, I think radical reflections is better experienced together, maybe. My entire life, I have taught people by sharing my own story. My very first time public speaking, outside of like a class assignment, where I was talking to a group larger than just my class for a book report, was when I was in fourth grade. And when I was in fourth grade, I went to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. And I loved space camp. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to explore the stars. I was hooked on Star Trek. Still am hooked on Star Trek, by the way, huge Star Trek fan. And if you can't tell, there's a Captain Picard right here. So, that was the first time I ever got to speak, to a big group of people. And I shared my experience. I shared what we did there and how I felt about it. And so that personal narrative has always been the primary way I teach. And I realized in trying to come up with a topic for radical reflections, it's probably just better just to maybe continue discussing, my story on some level and sharing my story with you, and hopefully you can see the topic emerge through that. Because the reason why I wanted to talk about forgiving yourself today is because that's the journey I've been on for the last several months, actually. Even though I've had a lot of grief happen over the past 4 months. I've lost my dad, my grandpa, a childhood friend, we most recently lost our dog. All of that loss has been helping me create a lot of room for that reflection, a lot of room for me to really look at myself deeply in the mirror, look at my history, look at the beliefs that I got from my dad or my grandpa, to alleviate and address the shame and guilt that I feel. Now, I'm someone who I am never going to shy away from my own shadow, from confronting my own shadow. That's been a very, very deep part of my life and my spirituality since I can remember. It's something that I do joyfully. It's something that I try to do with love instead of fear. And when I say confronting your shadow self, I want to be clear about what I mean and what I don't mean. All of us, all of us, all of us have things in our past that we are not proud of. It might have been words that we said to someone that caused a lot of harm. It could be actions or a failure to act. And I am not immune to any of that. So many of us, while we know that these things have happened in our lives, we often fracture ourselves by cutting off the offensive parts of ourselves and stuffing them into a box or shoving them into a dark corner of our memory. And all of us have these dark corners of memory. All of us have these blindsided viewpoints of who we are. Some of us are, we think, overly fond of ourselves, and have not always come to terms with how that darkness may have hurt other people. Others of us feel so ashamed and so guilty that we think that we ourselves are inherently bad people as a result of having done these bad, quote, bad things. And I am not immune to any of that. I have felt all of that. I continue to feel that and confront that. And because, and especially if you watch any of my tower videos, I view confronting my own darkness as being able to build my own tower. I can't build my tower from rubble if I don't know what is in those shadows, if I don't look in those dark corners. You can't move out of a house until you've swept through and taken everything out that was there, and you have to finally go into that dusty old attic and confront the things that you've been hiding all that time. And I view this as just a necessary part of our journey as adults and our journey as human beings. But my journey has been so laden with shame and guilt. And I'm the type of person that even if I'm 1% responsible for something, I will take on the guilt as if I was 100% responsible for it. And I have done that my entire life. But there were a series of incidents that happened between 2006 and 2012, over the course of 6 years, where a very particular part of myself was completely cut off and shoved into a jail cell, if you can think about it. And imagine it this way. I always describe my heart as being like this really big hotel that's just constantly expanding. And so each person who comes into my life has their own room in the hotel of my heart. And that room is theirs and theirs alone. That can come and go as they please. They have the freedom to do what they will, so long as they just don't wreck the place. Just don't wreck the place. You wreck the place, I have to put you through extra security when you come back. And that's just not fun for any of us. So just don't wreck the place. Respect what I'm providing here. And there are no locks on the doors. Not a single one. No one is locked in and no one is locked out. Except for this one part of me. And I remember this back in 2011, I had this dream. And I believe wholeheartedly in my dreams. They are, if it's not, my subconscious trying to speak up to me, then I do view them as just these beneficial stories of information that help me make sense of the world. And so I had this dream that I was in the hotel of my heart, and I was sitting on a bench outside of this series of rooms. And this one room had a window and 20 locks on it. 20 different kinds of locks. It was essentially a jail cell. And behind that jail cell was a spider queen. And she forced me to look at her, and she told me that my last battle would be with her. And I would have to confront her. I would have to look at her. I would have to see her and embrace her completely as she is. And that I would not be ready to be the queen until I did that. When I say be the queen, I distinguish that from her in that for the last roughly the same amount of time, since roughly 2013, I have viewed what I am doing as marching toward this new archetype. I have gone from the wounded healer to the queen. And so it would make sense that I would have to battle this deep, dark creature. And it's only been in the last few weeks that I have ever felt even ready to confront her. I am severely arachnophobic, so please understand how difficult that imagery is for me. And I apologize if you are arachnophobic as well. That's why I put a disclaimer at the beginning. I took a Holy Fire Reiki 1 and 2 class certification not too long ago, and there's a lot of just good healing energy that comes from even doing that. And the one who taught it is Kelly Noel Zeva, and just very talented teacher. That unlocked a lot of self-forgiveness. And in those meditations that we did during that training, I felt like I got deeper and deeper to the core of what I've been trying to do, because all this time I've been peeling away at all these different layers of darkness. I've confronted this issue and I've confronted that issue. If you read my blog, you've seen all the different ways I have confronted these different dark corners in my life, and I have embraced these different dark figures in my life. But she is the nastiest, biggest boss bitch of them all. And it wasn't until 2 weeks ago that I even felt ready to finally confront her. But confronting her was more about taking the locks off the door and letting her stretch her legs on her own terms. Letting her earn trust in me again. Because what had happened was I went through all these really difficult things, and I felt like someone needed to be punished. Janet needed to be punished for all of these things happening. And it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just one trauma. It was like 6 years of trauma on top of trauma, on top of trauma, on top of trauma. Most of which, again, if I even was 1% responsible, I blamed myself for that. And so I had to punish myself for that. So I remember when these events first started happening, my natural instinct is to cave in on myself, to blame myself, to accept responsibility, to hold myself accountable. And I did. And I never held anyone else accountable. I was angry and I was hurt. I was being used to flatten the divine feminine within me. I punished my sexuality, thinking it caused all these things. And so I shoved her, this darker, more assertive, aggressive part of me that I used to think of as a Black Panther, I had shoved her away in this cell. No one else was prevented from coming or going. No one else was deprived of their freedom except this part of me. And that says something. That I was so willing to fracture myself. I was so willing to cut off this shadow and shove her in a box to prove to what patriarchy that I can obey the rules. I was built to be wild and free. I was built to be this person. And so by shoving her away in this cell, even voluntarily, even saying, if you could just go there for a couple of weeks so that I can, get things, better here. My willingness to let her go and my willingness to punish her and make her take on all of these things is what made her into my most fearsome enemy. Arachnophobia, for me, is deeply associated with my prior sexual trauma. And so it's very appropriate that the longer that she stayed in that cell, the longer she stayed separate from me, the more she became personified by the thing I loathe and hate the most. Because she is who had helped me heal from all of that sexual trauma. She is the one who said, no, we are going to recover on our own terms and we are going to do it this way. And I was the one who helped temper that into something useful and beneficial. We have to work in unison together. We have to work together. And I felt like it was really important to tell this story because there had to be a moment where I forgave her. I forgave her impulsiveness. I forgave her, her willingness to risk everything for authenticity. And she forgave me. She forgave me for doing what I thought was necessary to protect my family. She forgave me for thinking that I could live without her. And it's so funny because while all this is happening, I got really obsessed with watching Once Upon a Time on Disney Plus. And, I had watched it years ago and just never really finished the series. And so I was making my way back through the series as kind of research for the book I'm doing. And it just kind of fun storytelling, right? Well, while all of this is happening, simultaneous to all of this, one of the main characters, Regina, had separated her evil queen side from her. So you had a Regina and you had an evil queen. You have a Janet and you have a Spider Queen. Those two storylines paralleled each other in ways that I just cannot even describe. And right at the right time, because that show actually gave me a template for re-embracing that Spider Queen part of me that I created. She may have gone in as a panther and walked out as a Spider Queen, but she's been me the whole time. And she's the me that I have not wanted to face, and she's the me that I didn't want to forgive. But I will tell you, that magical moment where I embraced her and I said, I see you. And I gave her the gift that I have given others, that others have been so generous in giving me. That gift of unconditional love and acceptance for ourselves. It was like a curse had broken. This shockwave went through my life and upended everything that I knew or thought I had known about myself. All the ways in which I was keeping myself small became even more evident and more dissonant. And so that's what I've been doing the last few weeks, is pulling out those parts of my life that were constructed around being a good girl for patriarchy. When in fact, the whole time, I just needed to forgive myself. And to tell myself that I was not responsible for other people using my information against me. And even if I wasn't as diligent as I could be, if I wasn't as whatever as I could be, they made the choice to hurt me, not the other way around. And specifically, we have restrained, especially a lot of feminine voices. And I use the divine masculine and feminine very, very loosely because I don't buy into the whole gender binary thing, and I view it more as just forces that have to work in unison together. But we have done a lot to make these voices that are wild and free and authentic feel shame and guilt, and we carry that baggage with us. It makes it impossible sometimes for us to think that we can climb that mountain and see how we integrate with the rest of the world, because we think we've done something so bad that we don't ever deserve to be there. We're still punishing ourselves. We're still enacting penance. And that's not much different than the penitentes of my childhood who would flagellate themselves on Good Friday. Except we don't confine it to just one day. And maybe that's what we need, is we need maybe an annual day where we sit and we look at our own darkness and we forgive ourselves. We may never be forgiven by the people who we harmed. We can always welcome that, should that be generously given to us. We cannot place our forgiveness on someone else's shoulders. Because there comes a point at which we have to forgive ourselves. And we have to say it's okay for us to have been human beings. For us to have done some wrong things. And for us to be whole and complete people again. Forgiveness helps to heal the fracturing that we have done to ourselves over all of this time. That was a very heavy topic. And like I said, I'm going to put a disclaimer before this because I know that there were some trickery things that probably were mentioned. So I really appreciate you staying along for the ride. I will keep you updated as I integrate this part of myself back into my life again. And I think with Radical Reflections topics, it's just best for us to just share our stories. What are your radical reflections? What are things that you have been able to forgive in yourself? Or have you? And it's not a one size fits all. It's not an on or off switch. Either you forgive yourself or you don't. It's a process, and it's continual. And it's about showing that compassion in every area of our life, especially to ourselves. So thank you for joining me today. And I sometimes make it too personal, but I really hope that that story can resonate with you and give you some ideas of how you can face your own big boss battle with love and tenderness and understanding and humility. My best wishes to you. Thank you again.